This bird weighs about an ounce and a half, less than a candy bar, and it can stay airborne for 10 months straight without a single landing. Not on a branch, not on a wire, not on the ground. It eats in the sky, drinks in the sky, sleeps in the sky, and dies in the sky too. Subscribe right now. New videos about animals and nature come out here every week. Today we're talking about the swift, a bird you've heard hundreds of times, seen every summer, but almost certainly don't really know. Because the swift isn't just a bird, it's a creature that rewrote the rules of how life can work. Let's start from the beginning. Every summer, dark silhouettes with sharp, sickle-shaped wings streak across city skies. A piercing screech, a sharp turn, gone. Most people look up and think, swallows. No, these are swifts, a completely different bird. Swallows and swifts aren't related at all. The swift's closest relative isn't the swallow, or even the sparrow. It's the hummingbird. Yes, that tiny bird hovering over a flower sipping nectar. They look like they're from different worlds, but evolutionarily, they're close cousins. Nature loves surprises like that. Honestly, I couldn't tell them apart either until I looked into it. I'd see the sky and think, swallows. Turns out I had no idea what I was looking at. So how do you tell a swift from a swallow overhead? Look at the wings. A swallow's are broad at the base, tapering gently. A swift's are narrow, stiff, sickle-shaped, almost like a boomerang. Its tail is short, its body stretched like an arrow. It doesn't flutter, it slices through the air. The common swift measures about 7 inches. It weighs about an ounce and a half. Its plumage is dark brown, almost black against the sky, with a pale throat patch. Males and females look identical. Even ornithologists can only tell them apart up close. Now look at its anatomy, and it's immediately clear why the swift is built this way. Every part of its body is the result of millions of years of evolution, honed for one task: flight. Narrow, stiff wings, perfect for fast, energy-saving gliding. Light but sturdy bones. A heart and lungs built for constant strain. A fast, efficient metabolism. It burns energy and replenishes it right there in the air. And now, the feet. Here's where it gets interesting. A swift's feet are tiny, 4 toes, all pointing forward, not for walking, not for hopping, only for gripping vertical surfaces, cliffs, walls, gaps in buildings. On flat ground, a swift is helpless. It can't take off from level ground. If it falls, at best it crawls a few feet. The one exception is the black swift, which can hop and launch that way. Most species can't. The ground isn't a resting place for a swift, it's a trap. The scientific name of the swift genus is Apis. From ancient Greek, it means footless. The Greeks looked at this bird thousands of years ago and saw what we see, a creature with no feet at all, a creature that belongs to the sky. Now let's get to what makes the swift truly unique. To the record that, when I first read it, seemed like a mistake. I checked several sources. Turns out it's true. A swift can stay airborne for 10 months straight, without a single landing. 10 months. Almost a year. While you live your ordinary life, waking up, eating, going to bed, waking up again, this palm-sized bird is flying. Over mountains, over deserts, over oceans. It doesn't land for even a second. For decades, biologists suspected this, but proving it was impossible. The bird's too fast, the route's too long. Everything changed when Swedish researchers at Lund University built miniature sensors. Tiny backpacks weighing a fraction of an ounce, fitted with accelerometers and light sensors. Small enough not to affect flight. The birds were caught during nesting season, tagged and released. A year later, caught again, and the devices removed. The data was staggering. Some birds spent more than 99% of their time in flight. Some never touched the ground at all, from the moment they left to the moment they returned. Not once, not for a second. Did you know swifts spend nearly their whole lives airborne, without landing for months? Tell me in the comments who already knew this, and who's as surprised as I was. How is this even possible? A swift doesn't fight the air, it uses it. Rising thermals carry it forward while its muscles hold a steady rhythm. In good weather, it covers huge distances with barely any effort. In rough conditions, it switches to active flapping, but it never stops. And now, the hardest question. If a swift doesn't land for 10 months, how does it eat, drink, sleep? Each answer is its own story, one that flips everything we think is possible in nature. Start with food. A swift hunts what ornithologists call aerial plankton. It sounds beautiful, and it is. At about 3,000 to 6,000 feet, invisible clouds exist constantly. Tiny flying insects, spiders drifting on silk, minuscule gnats, all lifted and carried by wind across whole continents. We don't see it. The swift does, or rather, senses it. It flies straight through with its mouth wide open. Bristles along the beak's edges work like a net, funneling prey in. In a few hours, one bird catches thousands of insects, from tiny gnats to small moths. When feeding chicks, a swift packs insects into a special bundle, a dense capsule right in its throat. Sometimes several hundred insects, glued with saliva. It carries this capsule to the nest and hands it to the chicks. A small, compressed, nutrient-packed ball of life. Water is handled even more elegantly. A swift doesn't land by a pond. It skims low over a lake or river, and for a split second, touches the surface with the tip of its beak. The thinnest film of water, and it climbs again. It bathes the same way. A quick dip on the wing, then a shake, all in midair. This part got to me the most, personally. I always figured sleep meant a bed, quiet, a pillow. But here's a bird dozing at 3,000 feet, flying over the Sahara. How exactly a swift sleeps is still being studied. But scientists, studying related species and flight patterns, believe swifts use what's called unihemispheric sleep. One half of the brain dozes while the other stays alert and keeps the bird flying. Dolphins use the same trick. So do some seabirds. Nature built it for creatures that can't afford to fully shut down. At dawn and dusk, swifts climb high, tracing slow spirals upward. The air is calmer there, fewer obstacles. That's likely where most of their sleep happens. The bird glides on a steady current, one half of its brain resting, and that's enough. And last, something that seems downright impossible: mating. Observers have recorded swift pairs in courtship flights right in midair. A brief, rapid coupling at speed, then apart in different directions. For a creature that almost never touches solid ground, even this obeys the laws of the sky. Now let's follow one particular swift through its whole year. It'll put the scale of all this in perspective. Our bird hatches in a nest under the roof tiles of an old building somewhere in Europe. For the first weeks, all it knows is darkness and its parents arriving with food. Every visit brings a capsule of insects, tiny wings and legs glued with saliva. This builds muscle, forms feathers. One evening, the parents stop coming back. Hunger and instinct push the young swift to the edge of the nest, and it falls. That fall is its first flight. No rehearsal, no experience. The bird has never seen the sky, and in the first second, it's in it. Almost immediately, it joins other young birds, and together they climb higher, circle the city, and head south. Ahead lies the Mediterranean, the Sahara, Central Africa, a journey of thousands of miles. No map, no parents. Navigation in swifts is inborn. Young birds find their routes entirely on their own. Ever notice swifts over your own house? Tell me in the comments. I'm curious which cities are watching this. A swift flies at about 3,000 to 6,000 feet. Radar studies show it rarely drops low enough to be seen clearly from the ground. It sweeps over mountains and deserts like a shadow. By autumn, it reaches the warm, insect-rich air over Central Africa. Here it spends the northern winter, passing over forests, savannas, wetlands, never lingering, never landing. Months later, when the sunlight's angle changes, when instinct says it's time, the bird turns around and heads back, north, to the same country, the same city, often the very same building, the very gap under the tiles where it hatched. Over that year, it covers tens of thousands of miles. Some estimates put it around 25,000. That's farther than the equator's length, a body weighing an ounce and a half, tracing the circumference of the globe. But let's go back to one moment worth breaking down further: migration. Because once you understand what actually happens on that journey, the scale gets even harder to believe. Swifts nesting in Scandinavia head for Africa at summer's end. Their route crosses the Alps, then the Mediterranean, then the Sahara. The Sahara is more than 3,000 miles wide. No water, almost no insects. Blistering heat by day, freezing cold by night. Sandstorms can rise without warning and turn the sky into a wall. A swift doesn't fly around the Sahara, it flies straight through it. Over Central Africa's tropical forests, everything changes. The air is thick with insects, it's warm. The swift spends months there, moving constantly, over forests, savannas, wetlands, never stopping, never landing. Then, the turnaround. Birds from Scandinavia return to Scandinavia. Birds from Britain return to Britain. Birds from your own city return to your own city. This instinct is so precise that researchers have logged a single bird returning to a single crevice in a single building a year later. Not somewhere similar, the exact spot. How do they do it? Science doesn't have a full answer yet. Likely a whole set of mechanisms. Orientation by the sun, by Earth's magnetic field, by the stars. Young birds flying for the first time navigate with no help at all. The program is built in from birth. Not something you can teach, just something that's there. One more detail worth pointing out: speed. In level flight, the common swift reaches about 70 miles per hour. Regularly, not at its limit, just cruising. The white-throated needletail, one of the largest of the family, can hit about 105 miles per hour, faster than most cars on the highway. This small bird covers in 1 second a distance about 150 times its own body length. If a person moved at the same relative speed, they'd need the speed of a jet. Yet the swift isn't just fast, it's maneuverable. It can change direction sharply without losing speed, shoot straight up, or dive in an instant. The secret is independent control of each wing. Left and right can beat at different rates. That difference is what allows instant turns. That's exactly what makes the swift nearly impossible for predators to catch. The peregrine falcon and the merlin are the only birds that can realistically try. Even they rarely succeed. The swift veers away at the last moment, and the predator misses. In a flock, it's even harder. When hundreds of swifts race over a city in a tight group, a dark whirlwind of bodies, screeching, sharp turns, hitting one specific bird is nearly impossible. The predator gets lost in the swirl. By the way, that fast, swirling group movement over the city we see on summer evenings is called a screaming party. Swifts gather before nightfall, climb high, and circle together. It's their evening ritual. Not just play, most likely their main sleep phase too. High up, in calm air, together. Now let's talk about the few weeks when a swift actually touches something solid. A wall, to be precise. A swift's nest is its own story. Unlike most birds, it doesn't gather materials from the ground. Leaves, twigs, mud, none of that. Everything for the nest has to be caught in midair. Thin fibers, down, feathers drifting at altitude. The bird glues it all together with saliva. In some species, swiftlets, the nest is built entirely from saliva. No other materials, just hardened salivary secretion, layer upon layer. These very nests, harvested from caves in Southeast Asia, go into the famous bird's nest soup, one of the priciest delicacies in East Asian cuisine. Though it'd be more accurate to call it swift's nest soup, since swiftlets are swifts, not swallows. A swift has strict requirements for a nesting site. It needs height to dive down and gain speed on takeoff, darkness and protection from predators, a clear path in and out, ideally a deep crevice in a cliff or a building wall. Swifts choose a mate once, for life. Their monogamy is absolute. One pair, one season after another, the same spot every time. If swifts return under your roof every summer, it's likely the same pair, year after year. The female lays white, unmarked eggs. Both parents incubate. But unlike most birds, swifts can pause incubation. If weather turns bad and insects grow scarce, they fly dozens of miles off to find food. The eggs or chicks drop into torpor. Body temperature falls, metabolism slows. A chick can go a week without eating and survive. Another unique adaptation, a body that knows how to wait. Once the chicks are big enough and fully feathered, the parents fly off. We already know what's next. Hunger. The edge of the nest. A fall into the sky. The record lifespan for a common swift is 21 years. If a bird spends 10 months of every 12 airborne over 20 years, that's more than 160 months of flight. More than 13 years of non-stop movement in a single life. A hard number to believe. Now, what's happening to these birds today, and why it concerns us directly? Swifts once nested in the hollows of old trees, in rock crevices, in caves. Then people cleared forests and rebuilt cities, and swifts adapted. They moved into buildings, gaps under roof tiles, cracks between slabs, unsealed openings in the facades of old brick houses. To a swift, every apartment building falls into one of two types: the kind where you can build a nest, and the kind where you can't. In an old brick building, you can. In a new building with a smooth, sealed facade, you can't. Nothing to grip. Then renovation comes. The old facade gets covered in new panels. Every gap gets sealed. The colony that lived there for decades vanishes. The birds return in spring to their usual spot and find no entrance left. I live in a modern apartment building. No swifts above it. Now I understand why. In more developed countries, this is already being addressed. In Germany, the UK, and the Netherlands, conservation groups work directly with builders. There are special swift bricks, blocks with a built-in cavity of the right size, mounted right into a new facade. Outside, an ordinary wall. Inside, a ready-made nest. The bird flies in through a small opening, unaware it was built just for it. If residents vote for a renovation plan with swift bricks included, the colony survives. It works. Wherever it's done, the swifts stay. There are activists here too. People install wooden swift boxes under building eaves, work with property managers, write to local officials. Not a hobby, real work that gets real results. Ever seen a swift box? Maybe even built one? Tell me in the comments, I'd love to hear about it. But the problem isn't just about nests. There's another threat that's harder to see. A swift feeds on aerial plankton. Aerial plankton means insects, and that's where a chain begins that touches all of us. Pesticides wipe out insects across farmland. Patches of sky become biological deserts. A swift flies over and snaps at nothing. Light pollution from cities disorients migrating birds at night. They're drawn to lit-up buildings and towers and crash into the glass. Climate change shifts the timing of insect emergence. A swift returns from wintering grounds on its own internal calendar, and the insects aren't out yet, or already gone. Its chicks go hungry. For now, common swifts as a species are still fairly widespread. But in a number of European countries, their numbers have dropped noticeably in recent decades. A bird that seems so free, so much a creature of the open sky, is tied closely to what we do down on the ground. And here's something important I want to say. The swift isn't just a beautiful story about records, it's an indicator. Scientists use migratory species as living instruments for measuring the planet's health. When a swift arrives earlier or later than usual, that's a signal of climate change. When its routes over Africa shift, that tells us something about changing rainfall across an entire continent. A small bird we barely notice carries, in its flight, information about the health of the whole Earth. In many European cities, there's a tradition. The first swift's cry over the street marks the true start of summer. Not by the calendar, by the swift. And when those cries fall silent earlier than usual, people notice. Even if they can't quite say why it feels wrong. Maybe that's the real answer to why we should know about swifts at all. Not because it's useful, not because it's on a test, but because once you understand what this creature really is, that dark arrow flashing overhead and vanishing, you start looking at the sky differently. An ounce and a half, 10 months in the air, about 25,000 miles a year, 21 years of life, almost all of it in flight. A first flight taken blind, straight into the void, a partner for life. A nest built out of thin air, glued with saliva. Sleep with half a brain, 3,000 feet up, over a continent that isn't even home. This is the swift, a bird that decided it doesn't need the ground at all. If this video hooked you, support the channel, details in the description. It helps make more videos like this, deep, no filler, about real animals. Subscribe if you haven't, and hit like. It's the simplest way to tell us this was worth your time. See you next time.